Ladies, gentlemen, and destined ones of all ages, Black Myth Wukong comes out in just a few hours, and with the game being sort of such an enigma, developed by a relatively small studio, just a bit over 100 people, but with gameplay and animations that look stylish as hell. And while most people are expecting the game to land somewhere between a more standard action RPG story adventure game and a true proper Souls-like, you could be forgiven for having some interest in this game while having very little actual knowledge of what it is. So today we're going to go over 10 things that you need to know about Black Myth Wukong before diving into it on release. The very first thing is the release time for the game. The release date is August 20th, of course, but that is a bit vague considering that we have a full-on launch schedule map showing when the game releases worldwide, no matter what your time zone is. And for the Western continents, this is actually hitting on August 19th, later on in the day, with the rest of the world gaining access at various points through the morning of the 20th. Of course, it just means that the release time is synced for everyone, and this is just how it looks in different time zones, but it's important to show it like this regardless so you know when you can actually play the game. Second up is prepare your mindset for just how open the exploration is going to be in this game. The first area of it is relatively linear with minimal optional stuff going on, but once you get past the opening area, the game will expand and open up a significant amount with the various new maps that you can progress to. The best example that I've seen people compare this game to as far as the exploration is modern God of War games, where it is somewhat open world, but realistically it's actually just a lot of separate larger areas that you progress within, but the idea is that there's a ton of hidden places within this, lots of exploration available, tons of hidden rewards, and most reviewers have actually said that players simply should not expect to be able to 100% this game without the help of guides on the internet. So I'm not saying that you need to use guides, but if you want to see everything in the game, it definitely will help you out. On a similar note, for those who are into Souls-like games, turn that side of your brain on for the NPC dialogue of this game too, as that is where a lot of hints will be dropped to access hidden areas. So if you don't pay attention to the dialogue, you may very well actually miss gameplay. On which note, our third point is simply about the length of this game. If rushed to the end, ignoring side content, Black Myth Wukong will take you around 30 to 35 hours, so that is also dependent on how you actually fare with the bosses themselves. It has also been said that likely 30 to 40% of the game, if not more, is completely optional, and beyond being optional, it's just not obvious to find without tons of exploration and astute ears towards what's actually being said by the actual NPCs, with the expectation of most playthroughs being closer to 50 hours minimum for people who explore properly, with there even being reports of being upwards of 80 bosses in the game if you find all the optional ones, including an entire secret final boss on top of that as well. Fourth up, on the note of bosses there's a lot of varying opinions going on around the difficulty of the bosses in this game and what to expect, but the general consensus from the people that have played is that the early game bosses are relatively forgiving to the player, but once exploration opens up more, the bosses will get harder and harder until you reach the end of the game, some of them with multiple phases, with the idea being that the game is pushing you to explore more and to actually find upgrades for your gear or your abilities, either to counter bosses specifically, or just to make yourself stronger in general so you can take them down a bit easier. And again, while the early bosses won't give you too much pause, the endgame bosses, especially the optional ones that you have to search for, that's where the real challenge is hiding in the game. On which note, if you're wondering exactly what kind of game this is going to be, it's not going to treat you well if you're looking for something that will want you to just mash buttons. It's not going to be quite that simple. The combat is more methodical than that. Though it's not overly complex on the surface, it doesn't look to be that bad, the game does have RPG elements to it, and the way that those are represented are through upgrades and the exploration itself for the most part there. You will unlock a lot of your basic sort of skills and transformations relatively early within the story of the game, which will give you a tool set to sort of choose between and work around yourself. But the actual progression of power through gear and upgrades is much slower while you progress through the game, even if it does give you a lot of power if you actually lean into it. This will allow you to sort of choose your own playstyle relatively early, but it also does leave quite the sense of progression ahead of you to gain power too. A lot of the gameplay then will, at a base, be working around your staff, a legendary weapon capable of changing size to the point of being essentially sheathed in a pocket or expanded to the size of a large tree trunk that you can fling around to do some incredible damage around you too. For those who are just going into this based on word of mouth or a single trailer, this game is going to have extremely funky combat, from the notion of the expanding pole staff to the fact that one of the Monkey King's main abilities is transformation magic, and we'll be using that as our character, the Destined One ourselves, and how important it will be in our general combat flow. And speaking of what's ahead of you then, we should also talk about the story of the game. Not necessarily the story of the game, I guess, but the source material for what the story is, Journey to the West. If you are familiar with this tale, then the game will have a lot of moments that you will find clever or interesting, or even just fun in ways that they've worked in little bits of the story into it, in a way that people who aren't as familiar with the base source material would actually actually be. Not to get into the spoilers themselves for the game, of course, but for a quick background of the source material, the player character is not Sun Wukong. You are, however, a different Monkey King perhaps. We are known as the Destined One. However, it's important to know the journey of Sun Wukong to actually know what's going on here. And Sun Wukong began his journey by searching for some way of achieving immortality. This led him through various shenanigans, various trials and tribulations, and a lot of fights against increasingly powerful and more imposing enemies as well, which of course would make sense as bosses for a game, before he eventually even ascended to become a Buddha himself. How much of this the game will cover, we'll find out, but that's essentially the general layout of what I would expect the story to be about, and what our goals are personally too. And something again that I would consider is the idea of Sun Wukong ascending to become a Buddha, and us being a separate Monkey King who isn't Sun Wukong. Past that then, number 8, the game will actually have a New Game Plus function at launch, which tends to make sense given the vast exploration that is available within this, so don't feel completely locked into 100%ing the game on your first go around, even if you're someone who really likes to actually complete games completely, as you can always just go back into the game with all of your upgrades and journey to the west once more in a second playthrough with a New Game Plus game mode. Number 9 then, before you commit to actually purchasing the game, for those who are on PC at least specifically, there is a benchmark tool that has been released on Steam that you can use to see how well your PC can handle this game. I have heard tales of it having optimization issues for various people from various sources, so especially with this tool available, you should definitely make sure that you use it before finding out your system can't handle it the hard way by just trying to play the actual game and buying it on release. Before we end all of this off then, just a more quaint sort of honorable mention is that the game will have a photo mode. The graphics look great, the animations are really neat on a lot of the abilities, and some of the transformations and skills just have awesome visuals too. So a photo mode existing is just sort of a nice bonus to have if you're someone who likes taking screenshots of the more photogenic moments. Then finally, number 10 is a very sort of vague but simultaneously sort of specific tip if you pay attention, which is always check behind waterfalls for hidden areas or objects in video games in general. I'm not necessarily saying this game, you know, it can apply to most any video game, but it's something that I feel is important to say when considering perhaps the first area that you play within Black Myth Wukong. Just saying, waterfalls, don't trust them, never trust waterfalls. That just about does it for today then, everyone. We'll be back quite soon with more Black Myth Wukong videos if you actually want more from us once the game is live, so make sure to let us know what type of things you'd like to see in the comments down below. I hope you've enjoyed this end, and hopefully it helps you actually walk into the game on release, knowing what you're getting into just a little bit better than you did before. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.